Hi YouTube, my name's Jeff and I'm the vegoilguy. You may have seen my videos on safely using a piggyback fuse holder, where I let you guys know how you can easily use these simple items to safely run electrical equipment in your vehicle. Well, folks have been asking what size fuses they can use in a piggyback fuse holder, and some have been asking, more importantly, can I actually overload the wiring in my vehicle? Well, yes you can, and that's something I'm going to look at right now. Stick with me if you want to know more about overloading wiring. Hi again guys. So firstly, are piggyback fuse holders safe to use? Can you use them to wiretap to safely connect electrical items in your vehicle? Yes, I believe so, and I cover those points very clearly, I hope, in the videos that you can see on the screen right now. This video will cover the safety implications of using a piggyback incorrectly and overloading your vehicle electrical system. For those of you who are not interested in seeing any of my diagrams or listening to my electrical lectures, I'll state nice and early right now for you that I personally wouldn't recommend using a piggyback to connect anything greater than 10 amps. If you want to do anything more than that, run a dedicated line. Anything less than 10 amps should be fine. So for the rest of you, what you can see here is what I'm going to be covering. So let's get on with it. What is an electrical overload? Well, load is the term applied to the amount of current being drawn by an electrical device, and it's measured in amps. Wires that connect power to electrical devices, in vehicles or domestically, are rated by the amount of load they can carry, by how much current they can safely handle. The more current a wire can carry, the thicker the wire is. This is simply due to the amount of conductive material inside them. A thick wire can carry a small load with ease, but being thicker, it contains more copper, so it's more expensive. Plus it takes up more room and it's less flexible. Because of this, vehicle manufacturers generally use as thin a wire as they can get away with to save money and to make installation easier. Now when you run a lot of current through a thin wire, the load becomes greater than the wire can handle. It overloads. This means it gets hot, it heats up. All wires heat up in use, but generally it's so small you can't detect it. But with an overload, the sheathing around the wire can begin to melt. This in turn can melt nearby wires, create electrical shorts and touch against the chassis, that sort of thing. So a long story short, at best it can lead to an electrical failure, and at worst it can create an electrical fire. So if you like, an overload is an electrical disaster waiting to happen. In a typical fuse board, individual wires typically connect to fuse holders. The thickness or gauge of the wire, i.e. the amount of load it can take, is as low as the manufacturer can get away with. He doesn't want to waste money on thick wire, and he knows that thin wire will overload. So it's the Goldilocks principle, if you like. Not too much, not too little, just right. Let's say, for example, the manufacturer fits a device that runs on a load of 17 amps. It would be stupid if he fitted a wire with a rating of only 11 amps, as obviously this is going to overload. In the same way, his shareholders would lynch him if he wasted money fitting a 100 amp wire. So he'd probably fit a 25 amp wire, which is not too much and it's not too little, it's just right. So how does all this fit in with a piggyback fuse holder? Well, I think by now you're probably beginning to see the possible implications for an overload using a piggyback. As I've demonstrated on my other videos, a piggyback shares the wire that feeds an original fuse within the fuse board. Whilst it does not affect the original fuse or even the original device in any way, it does affect the wire that supplies that fuse. It adds to the overall load. Let's use an example and let's look at a vehicle horn. This has a fuse of say 20 amps. If the fuse is 20 amps, then the horn is probably using more than 15 amps, which is a standard size fuse. So it's probably reasonable to guess that it's using say 17 amps. So we'll stick with that for a figure. There has to be a wire power in the fuse, and this has to be able to handle at least the same load as the fuse, otherwise it would overload. And a typical gauge for wire is 25 amps. When you use the horn, 17 amps of load passes happily through the original wire, through the fuse and to the device. Great, everything works fine. Now along comes Mr. Piggyback. Any power going into the device powered by the Piggyback has to be drawn through the original wire. So let's add another horn. Why we do this, I don't know, but let's just say we did. That means the original feed wire now has two 20 amp fuses connected to it. Using both horns will not affect the fuses in any way, and it will not affect the original circuit or the Piggyback circuit in any way at all. So you could be fooled into believing that all is well, but it isn't. If you used both horns at the same time, then the chances are you'd be drawing far more load than the original cable is capable of handling. The overall load would be two lots of 17 amps, which is 34 amps, but our original feed wire is only rated at 25 amps, so that's an overload of 9 amps, which is more than enough to lead to serious electrical problems. Remember folks, if you see a car on fire, it might be nothing to do with fuel and everything to do with poorly done electronics. Now if I've terrified you there, firstly, good, you should be cautious of electricity, it is dangerous. But secondly, don't be too concerned. Piggyback fuse holders can be used safely. At the beginning of this video you heard me say that I wouldn't recommend using a Piggyback to power anything more than 10 amps, and if you're going to do that, run a dedicated line. It's a very general guide and I can't be specific with it, it's just my guess if you like. Really, the lower the load, the better. Thankfully, most vehicle auxiliary devices tend to use low power, and that's why Piggyback fuse holders can be safely sold and safely used. I first drew attention to Piggyback fuse holders, albeit indirectly, through my hardwiring a dashcam video. Now a dashcam is an ideal example for a Piggyback. The dashcam I fitted had an internal fuse of 5 amps if I remember correctly, so that means it probably runs at 3 amps or so let's call it 3 amps. Using our horn circuit again, if we use the Piggyback here and we use say a 10 amp fuse or lower, all will be well. Why you ask? Well, the horn has a load of 17 amps. The dashcam has a load of 3 amps, so that's a total load of 20 amps. As the original feed wire is rated at 25 amps, we can see there's little danger of overload here. You get the idea? As long as you're not overly taxing the original feed wire, as long as you're not increasing the load to the point where the wire itself will fail, then you're quite safe to use a Piggyback fuse holder without any worry of overload. And I think that's a finished video folks. I hope I made everything nice and clear for you. If I didn't, drop me a line and I'll try and talk you through it. Please remember, I'm no expert, just a keen amateur, so it's always worth checking out what other people say on the subject. Some fantastic videos on YouTube and wonderful websites out there, so do give them a look. If you've got any questions, as I say, do drop me a line and I'll do my best to help. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it. If you didn't, then why not let me know why? I'm always eager to improve my videos. Your comments and questions are always welcomed, and I really love to hear from you guys, so do drop me a message below. If you have a request for a video tutorial, again, drop me a line. I'll help where I can. Please do check out my YouTube channel and of course my other videos. I've got 50 plus videos out there now, and I'm receiving some fantastic feedback and seeing real interest from subscribers, so thank you all for that. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, the more the merrier. So that's it for now folks, thanks very much for watching.